Hey, 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 beautiful beings. So today we have Greg Paul joining us as our guest. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you.
So Greg Paul has a website called thesovereignsway.com. And as always with my interviews, what happens is someone just reaches out to me and says, Lindsay, you need to speak to this person. So that's how come I'm speaking with Greg today. So Greg doesn't give many interviews, so I'm very grateful for your time, Greg, today. So I read your website, Greg, and like I said to you just before we came on, your story I found really inspiring. So I was just wondering if you can sort of tell us a little bit about how you awaken, basically, about your spiritual awakening.
Yeah, well, I'll try and sum it up into a few minutes, but it's a big story, really. I guess going back to even being a young boy. I mean, I was born to my father was a police officer,
All right.
so I grew up in this kind of like law or moral, very moral household, with even hearing things about common law and these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't really understand either fully, only partially. And I always could see that the world was fucked, that they were all crazy, and there was a certain sanity that that they could see what was saying. And so I always wanted to change the world. I had a big plan. I was going to be a millionaire. I'd seen that you needed money and power to change this world. Mm. So this mistaken viewpoint about what you needed to change the world meant I had this plan. I was going to be a millionaire by 30 and a billionaire by 40, and then I was going to be Secretary General of the United Nations. Wow. This was literally it. I was like a young boy saying, no, this is my life plan. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But then, 23 years old, love struck, I suppose. I had a heart awakening and could suddenly, just out of nowhere, see the energy on trees and people and things. Wow. And it began a journey to look at life beyond the mental realm. And so, yeah, within a few years, I'd begun to obviously question things like, how's the system work, and where does law come from, and what's the operating system for this game of life? I want to know what the rules are. We learn what the rules to the game of Monopoly or or checkers or whatever games we're going to play. We know the rules before we play. It'd be stupid not to. For life, we don't really know. So I wanted to know what the rules were for life, all the cheat codes and everything. So, and I figured that was law. You understand law and natural laws and all of the laws of creation and man's law and all of it, then the rules of the game. So I was looking for that.
So were you sort of following the rules that you'd been told up to a certain point? Or not? Or did you?
Up to a certain point, yes. But I was also always playing a game, and I was good at that game. So I was quite successful before I woke up. And never rich, because I was always spending, I was frivolous and ungrounded, and I was all kinds of things. But
yeah, because you said when I was reading your story, so you had like a really successful job and you were earning a lot of money, and like you said, you were spending a lot of money, and then just one day you just decided that you weren't doing it anymore.
Well, I found out how the banking system really worked, was the main one. I just found out other things as well. But the banking system was the main one. That my mortgage was fraud, that the loans and credit cards were fraud, that the money itself was fraudulent in the way it was created. That was the view that I had, how the first 10% of money at least was coming into circulation, was a massive lie. And by being complicit with it, I was complicit with fraud. And what do I do having these moral views? So they stopped, cancelled every direct debit and standing order, quit using money. Wow. The whole 9 yards. For over a year, not a pound crossed our palms.
Wow. And that's quite a big stand to take, to obviously cancel everything and just go, right, I'm not touching money anymore. So that must have been very challenging in itself. So
we went the whole 9 yards, and we also returned the birth certificate, passport and driving license to their issuing authorities and burnt everything else with a name on it.
Wow. That's massive.
We was just gone. We were just done. We were out.
Yeah. So can you share the story about the house that you found? So you found an abandoned house.
No. We didn't find an abandoned house.
Okay, sorry.
We had our own house that we were quite happily living in. And we went through a process when we realized the mortgage was fraudulent. We challenged that whole thing. That was one thing. There was a separate story where I did find a house that was abandoned and owned by the so-called council. And I had a friend who was homeless. And so I did go and seize the house to put the man in. That was another story, but they're two different stories.
Okay,
it was a busy couple of years.
Yeah, it sounds it. So what happened though when you stopped paying your mortgage? You know, because people.
Yeah, I mean, I asked a lot of questions. First of all, like following this idea of conditional acceptance. You know, I understand that there could be a debt here. If you can prove that one exists, I'm happy to pay it on proof of claim, such and such. But how about this? And what about this? And what about these questions? Can you answer these for me? And they never could. So, but I didn't have all the answers that I have now about how to put forth your rights at law, how to express your law into the world, and how to stand as a man or woman at law. Didn't know that. I just knew what was wrong, and what I was not willing to do anymore. So we were challenging these things.
And you got evicted several times, didn't you, from your home? Was it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we went to the court. When there was a court hearing for this, and just said, hey, we just come along to let you guys know that, you know, we're not the named defendants here, but we have an interest. We're the man and woman who used the property, so we have an interest. So we went into this courtroom, and to cut a long story short, what actually happened was what we'd kind of expected to happen. We weren't trying to stop them play their silly games. We'd seen the illusion. The thing and the title to the thing, the house and the title are not the same thing. We were concerned with the property and the use of that property. The bank was concerned with its titles and the ownership of the title. We were like, okay, you can have the ownership of the title. We don't care, but we're a man and woman. We're going to continue using this thing. And this was our viewpoint. So curiously, what happened was that the judge granted an order for possession in favor of the bank, but actually hand wrote on the order that the man and woman who attended the hearing today are not the named defendants. And it was like the bank's lawyer, when he didn't know what had happened, but he knew something bad had happened for him. He couldn't understand what it was. So then he started saying, "Oh, what about this? And what about this passport? Is this you? Is this you?" And, you know, all of these questions in a frenzy, thinking, "What's happened? I'm not sure, but I've got to do something about this." And so we were left alone to use the house for over a year. Wow. And it was done. But then after a year or so, the bank proceeded to obtain a unsigned warrant without, you know, no lawful order of the court to obtain a warrant, an eviction warrant. And yeah, so we went through a program 7 times. 7 evictions there were, because 6 times I went back and reclaimed the house. If they put metal shutters on the window, I got an angle grinder. Every time I was quicker than the police could get there, so they could never see it actually happen, and we were there. And then 3 weeks later, it happened again. And it was, you know, it was an interesting time.
Yeah, I really liked when I was reading that. I was like, you've got such resilience, do you know what I mean? And to keep going back. And I think the first time you said they changed the locks, so you changed the locks to get back in. And then, yeah, you mentioned the angle grinder, and you just kept going back in. So at what point did you think, oh, my days, you know what, we're done now, this is enough?
Well, my ex-wife was, at the point in time, my ex-wife was 7 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And we'd had done the last eviction. We just like, we can carry on doing this. We can. But there was very much a spiritual journey of letting go of things. I even had some understanding. I'd studied a lot of other forms of law and had some understanding of how maybe we could even like win in court and get the house. But it never really felt like the right thing to do. So I didn't know how to do it completely right as I would now.
Yeah. So then you ended up going off to Peru and Bali, didn't you? Bali
first for 2.5 years, then Peru, then Ecuador, and, you know, after 6 years in the desert, we returned to the UK.
So when you came back, did you decide then to start studying common law, or did you already have a bit of knowledge about it?
Well, first of all, like I say, the study of the law was long before all of these times I'm telling you about now happened.
Yeah.
I'd been studying the law, various forms of law, common law, equity, and all different types of law for probably 10,000 hours I'd put into this to understand.
Wow.
And I'm quite smart when it comes to law and things like this. And so I was like, well, what's true is always simple. And so if I don't get this after 10,000 hours, whether the amount of time they say it takes one to become an expert at something, if it's not fully comprehensible to me after this amount of time, then it is not the truth. It is not the way. It is not the way for man and woman to be free, because it has to be simple. So I put it all to one side. And that's why we went out testing these things, because I decided, well, if there's no information to receive by my mind that can tell me the way to be free, I've just got to go out and do it and find out. And so I went out asking questions. So the whole thing was based on asking questions. I would challenge everything with a question until I would show the stupidity or the lack of sense in what was being brought to us, so that the thing would fall apart. And that was what was happening, is that the things that were coming to us, the attempts to impose statutory rules of society and legislation and these administrative procedures on us, they just fell apart. No one could do it. No one could touch us, because we just questioned it till it was seen as the stupidity it was. But I didn't have any of the tools. I was not using the wrong tools. I knew that common law was a trap. I knew that all of these other things were a trap. Could see them. Because the idea, I mean, just think, what people now are looking at is the Magna Carta. I've got these rights under the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
I say bullshit.
Okay.
I say, how ridiculous. You've woken up from the fact that you've been a slave and a serf to someone else's law your entire life. And now you're going to tell me that you think you've got your rights under someone else's law.
I think it's
really like, so these are the myths that I'm trying to dispel from people.
Yeah.
Creating common law courts and like asserting rights under someone else's piece of paper. Forget about that. What is law is the question. And law is nothing more or less than the rights to property. Everything that is law is that.
Yeah.
And every system of law is about property and the rights to property, and who can administer the rights to property, and who has the authority to set the law in regard to property. That's everything. That's the entire system of law. So if you're a woman and you have some property, in this instance your body or the home that you live in, and that's your property, then you are the one that has the domestic authority to set the law for your property. We just didn't do it. So, and this is the problem, that all we need to do to be free in this world is to learn to express our law for our property, and to be able to uphold that law in the presence of others of mankind, convened as a jury or otherwise, to be able to explain what our rules for our life, and to explain how that is the law and why it's the law. And when you can do that, you'll be free in the world. And until you can do that, you'll look for other solutions, like where can I register my birth certificate to be free and let someone else give me my freedom again? And where can I find my freedom? Who can give me a piece of my freedom?
I think, because I've seen this myself. I've seen, in a lot of groups I'm a member of, like you said, there are people quoting different articles and saying, well, if you use this, you don't have to explain yourself, and if you use that, and none of it quite, for me, none of it quite makes sense or really adds up, because it's a bit like, I suppose, like all of a sudden, when, I don't know, everyone is suddenly an expert, aren't they? Like you said, it can take hours to learn something. But now all of a sudden people are experts because they're just sharing things that they've read, and they're like, well, if you quote this article, you're fine. But it's like, you need to know more, don't you? And to understand, like, you do a video about being a free man or a free woman, which I thought, you managed to explain really well on the little, like, on the whiteboard you had, which just said about, we are free men and free women on this land, this earth, given of our energy. And I was like, that's it, that makes sense to me. Do you know what I mean? And then you put everything else in a little circle, the money and the titles and everything. So what you're sort of saying is that with common law, that is not correct. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I'm saying common law is quite literally. So common law could be your way to be free, but law common to what? Yeah, all there is law. If it's law, then it's law. If it's common law, isn't law, because otherwise it would sound the same. If it doesn't sound the same, it doesn't mean the same. What's common law? Well, you need to define what it's the law common to. In different places, common law is going to be different. And the legal society will happily construe that you mean their common law when you say common law. Yeah, and if you don't say otherwise, it will be automatically construed that you mean the common law of this land that you're stood on, the England, Her Majesty's law, which includes what? The statute book. It includes all of the case history from the thousands of cases, the millions of cases over thousands of years that have make up the case history book of this country. Yeah, and like all of that comprises the common law of this land. But what about if you said, okay, well, that's not really what I'm looking for. Yeah, I mean, first of all, think about where that came from. That came in every single case from judgments of judges, of those of mankind seated as judges to cast judgment over other men and women. Other men and women who failed to do the three things that we need to be able to do to be free in the world. Remove the controversy, come to peace, and bring forth remedy for everything in your life. See, when you can do that, the legal society cannot touch you because it can only feed on controversy. It's looking for controversy. It's trying to get you to agree to a controversy. Oh, there's a controversy here. We disagree with this, and now we can adjudicate you. But when you come and bring forth remedy for anything, say, oh, I'm sorry. Have I wronged you? If I've wronged you, then I'm really, really sorry. I'm happy to make remedy by way of this. Oh, by the way, I consider this imposition of an administrative procedure to be a trespass by way of barratry. And I'll require compensation in the amount of such and such. I'm going to give you the opportunity to make remedy, though, before it does become a trespass. Is that really kind of me? Yeah, and then he's like, what do I do with that?
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's reality.
Yeah.
You're just naming things for what they are and putting them in the real place, and you always bring forth remedy. So it's never going to get to that. So the entirety of the so-called common law has evolved out of men and women acting as children.
I was just,
basically,
you know, when you just have
complaints against each other and getting a judge to judge them. Now, what I'm saying is, at law, if you were a man or woman at law, then you would act like a man or woman. You would have removed the controversy, you would have brought forth remedy, and there would be nothing for a judge left to judge. And if you were in court, it's because you already have concluded the law. You have presented the findings of facts by way of evidence, the conclusions of law, and you've put forth an order that a judge has nothing to adjudicate, only to put forth your lawful order, your court. But the likelihood you're ever going to end up in a court when you are able to remove controversy everywhere in your life is slim to zero. I don't ever end up in a court.
No, I just had this like aha moment as you were talking. And I was just like, oh my God, that's like, people we didn't used to have a legal system, did we, like thousands of years ago? And it is like you said, it's like it's being created to put money into, you know, like fines go to the government, don't they? They go to the central bank or the Bank of England. And then it's created jobs, if you like, for judges, for solicitors, do you know what I mean? And like they're charging hundreds of pounds to defend you against something which you, like you said, may not have caused harm to or for, like a divorce. You know, no one's really caused any harm. There might be a bit of hurt, but you haven't killed each other, you know. And yet there's people charging thousands of pounds to remedy what could be done in a different way. Because
they refused as a man or woman to bring forth remedy, to come to peace amongst themselves. Yeah, if you want, it's like family court's a big con. Yeah, But it only happens because a man or a woman act like children, not as a man or woman. They don't agree, say, okay, well, we were together and now we're not, and let's agree to split our assets like this, and we'll take care of our sons and daughters in this way, and here's our agreement, and let's make our agreement privately. There we go.
Yeah.
That's what we should do. Yeah. Instead, I mean, the stupidity of actually going to a family court to get that kind of a matter settled is ridiculous. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you even just get a third party, a friend or someone, to just say, even if you can't quite agree, to just put in to help you come to what's reasonable between you?
I think, like you said, though, I think there are some, both men and women, who do act like children, that no matter how much you try, you know, your best maybe to be like, right, let's be amicable, let's do this. Sometimes that other party at this moment will not be amicable back. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but that's no excuse still. Any single one, man or woman, can bring forth remedy. So let's say you've just separated from your husband, who's a complete and total narcissist, and now he's going to bring forth this legal complaint and make all these lies against you and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So there's that situation. Well, first of all, my notice would be to that lawyer who's acting for him, and it would be, hey, yeah, I, a woman, Lindsay Banks, say that little Johnny and little Jimmy are property of I. Sons and daughters are property of I. I claim a property of I. And I do not give you authority to administer property of I. In fact, if you do administer property of I shall consider it a trespass by way of theft, and I will seek compensation from you, the man, in the amount of whatever. Sincerely, Lindsay Banks, a woman. So now the lawyer's gone. So he's not got a lawyer anymore, and he won't find one either.
Yeah.
So now what you're going to do is you're going to put forth your claim and say what you say the law is for your property. I, a woman, say that this property, being the home of I, is such and such. And I consider myself to be entitled to a 50% share in that property. I consider little Jimmy and little Johnny to be property of I, and consider that a fair resolution is for you. You put forth your law, you say, and you keep on putting it forward. And he's going to agree to it or not. Either he's going to come forward and meet you, yeah, or he's not, in which case he's going to keep dishonoring himself on paper, and you're going to put forth your lawful claim into a court, and a judge is going to have to put forth your order. But you need to act like a woman first, and you can do that.
I wish I'd known this.
How simple it is.
I know, but I wish I'd known this 3 years ago when I was going through my divorce, and I paid thousands for a solicitor that didn't do anything. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, it's like all this sort of, these learnings, if you like, I feel are certainly coming more to light this year. I think there are more of us who are sort of, you know, we've looked at over the last sort of 10, 15 years, taken more responsibility for our health. You know, our diets have changed, the way we exercise, the way we're living. And this feels like the next bit is about learning about the system that we're currently in and how we, like you said, can become free sovereign beings.
Well, we can't.
Okay.
You can't. So this is the misnomer. You can't be the sovereign's way isn't. I'm not saying you can be sovereign.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying the sovereign's way is God's way. It's a system of law that was created for us. She is the sovereign. We, by being humble, coming home to ourselves, not thinking that we're God and can do it all and know it all, and actually being humble about it and acting lovingly and bringing ourselves in harmony with those laws, the higher laws of the soul, of forgiveness, repentance, of coming back to ourselves as man and woman. By doing that, we get to experience, you know, her sovereignty, and which is freedom, which is to be free. Yeah. I call it the sovereign's way as a kind of, for exactly that reason, really. Yeah. So it's like people were chasing this idea of personal sovereignty. I consider it like the original, you could call it the original, that mankind's original emotional injury. Like to be self-reliant, do not want to engage with the divine anymore, to just say I can do it all, I know I can be free, I can do all this. It doesn't really work like that. There has to be some kind of, you know, at least some kind of humility and divine component, an acknowledgement of this capacity to the free will. This gift of free will was, you know,
Yeah, it's quite big. I feel like I've taken in quite a lot, Greg, just in like the sort of half an hour we've been speaking. So do you want to, so you run a course as well, don't you, about if people want to learn more about these laws and being a man and a woman. So do you want to share a little bit about that course that you run and what that looks like?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we've been running it as groups for this year, but we're transitioning into the new year into a different format where it's like a 25-hour or so online course where there's very little knowledge that we actually present, because knowledge of how to be true, the true knowledge of how to be free in the world is very simple. It's like all you need is your little pocket dictionary of caveman terms. There's like 20 or 30 new words that you would learn, and then everything else has got to go. So it's more like a few hours spent giving you so small amount of knowledge, and then the rest of the time is overcoming all the objections and showing you what needs to fall away. Because the fears that you have right now around what's going to happen, are they going to force vaccinate me? Where's the world going to go? Are they going to steal my children? All of this kind of stuff. The fears are false evidence appearing real, built upon a faulty belief system. And you say, yeah, Greg, that's fine, but they will come, and the army is going to come, and they are going to do this. And I say, no, it's not going to happen, actually. It's not like that. I know you think it is, and I know you think that I must be mistaken and living in some cloud cuckoo land, but it's not true. It's not. No. It's the fears that you have that are built upon false belief structures about who you are in relation to the system and life and reality. So in the course, we overcome those objections so that you can just reset your I, your law common to I, that comes about you expressing your law into the world. So when you let go of all these other beliefs about not this, not that, about what I am and what law is and what the system is, when you let go of all that, you have a greater understanding of what I is. And then you can express your law common to I into the world and uphold it. And speak it and justify it and explain it to others of mankind. So that's what the course is about. And then we have alongside that like the circle where we meet in like 2.5 hours every single week for Q&A, and there's different ways and different levels you can engage with the course.
I was going to say, I feel like part of this is definitely around getting your head around using different language. And I think you mentioned, I think it's in the program or the landing page about the course, where it says not using flowery language. And I was laughing to myself because I'm like, that's something that I remember, like my boss, when I used to work in like a proper job or like a Tesco, I used to work for them. And I remember my boss then saying, Lindsay, can you just get to the point? Because I would skirt around the houses and I would use all this different language just to try and learn how to express myself. Whereas some of the words I noticed in what you're saying, it's very much like, it's very clear, very concise and to the point, but it's changing, isn't it? The way that you speak and your language in order to, I suppose, speak with people that you're not used to speaking to. Does that make sense?
It's like we're teaching to speak caveman against I, man Greg, say you, woman Lindsay, did damage to property of I, in this instance, lawn of I, on such date. I state that this happened. See Exhibit A by way of evidence. I require remedy in such and such form.
Yeah.
I ask, is it your intent to remedy this wrong, or is it your intent to trespass against I? Sincerely, Greg Paulman. Done. Like 3-line notice. That's your entire law for the situation. It's learning to speak caveman and express what you've put forth into the world.
Yeah.
And the rest is done. And if you can't limit the amount of words you're using, see, we do it because of like fears and anxieties and other emotions that we don't want to feel. I'm saying feel those emotions. Got to look at the monster under the bed and stop trying to do things to avoid them. That's why the common law stuff and common law courts and all of these other, like the trust, whatever silly trust thing is flavor of the month at the moment. It's why they all appeal to people, because they're helping to avoid an emotion.
So like looking externally for a solution when actually the solution is within yourself.
Yeah, but in order to get to the solution in yourself, you've got to go through some icky emotions and like big fears and probably some shame and some terror and maybe a bit of grief and a few other things about about your life. And you've got to go through that to find it. find yourself and what I is.
And that's the difficult bit, isn't it? For some people, it's because when you start doing that, when you start looking at these emotions, sometimes they're quite deeply buried and you don't even know that they're there. And there is like outpouring, isn't there? And there's tears. And the more you get connected with your emotions, the more that you feel, and the more sort of like, I want to say like heightened your emotions can be, because when you feel sad, you really feel sad, or when you feel happy, you really feel happy, you know, and that sort of middle ground is sort of gone.
Mm-hmm.
So
until you have genuinely released all of the terror, all of the shame, all of the grief, and literally every single day is a new discovery of another level of joy. And it happens, and it's not far away. It's not an endless pit of terror, shame, and grief that we've got inside. It's not. But you have to look at it. You have to look at the monster under the bed. And until you do, that's what the world's going on in the world right now, is just the consequence of people running away from the monster under the bed for years, decades, centuries on end, now being forced to look at it. And so I'm saying, choose to look at it, and then life will stop compensating you and forcing you to do it against your will, dragging you kicking and screaming. So stop running away. Stop trying to find solutions in these other silly law strategies and stuff, and just deal with your stuff, and then express your law and speak it forth to the world, and stand as a man or woman. Take back your power as a soul, embodied as a man or woman on this earth right now. And
I like that.
I am the law. You are the law. That's the reality.
Just a question on that then. So say, for example, someone does your course, right? Has anyone utilized it in a challenging situation, shall we say? Have they used it in practice, and what has been their experience? So say, for example, I don't know, they had a fine, that they had a letter, and do you know what I mean? Can you give like a practical example of how it's been used?
Yeah, well, I can say, first of all, that a lot of things. So in some instances, like you gave the example of a fine, I would say that the majority of people that come through the course would have a different view of those fines that they've got, and they would recognize in a self-responsible way they just choose to pay it. That's the number one. There's that, and they would stop going around creating controversy. They got a ticket for parking somewhere. The owner of the property had put a notice up. They said, you're going to get charged for doing this. And so now people want to go around fighting parking tickets. Well, you can do that. There's ways you can do that, and you have ways you can get rid of the tickets. But all you're doing is turning down an opportunity to take responsibility for your actions that you did create. So we also are teaching that side of things. So, and when you start removing controversy, there is no tickets and other things to deal with. You don't get into these situations in the first place. Yes, John, who I teach the course alongside of, has been teaching this actively for a long time, and for him, this came out of a experience of recovering sons and daughters from the Child Protective Services. And so since I've helped hundreds of other mothers and fathers, men and women, recover their sons and daughters from we've got people that have taken the course, not just from the UK, but in civil law places in Slovenia and France, who are going out and expressing their law common to I.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And it's not getting to, things don't get to court. If you get to a point where you've got to court, then you've done something wrong. And you need to be asking, how did I create controversy here? And how do I remove that controversy? And so, yes, there are hundreds of examples of people that have been through this course or John's prior one-on-one things that have done that.
Fabulous. I'm pleased to hear that. It's just good to know that, that there's something that works if people need it. But
it's not a strategy that, like, if you think of it as a strategy for me to get away with something, then no, there isn't. There's not. There is no way you can apply this as a strategy. Well, you can to some things, but you're gonna be shown for wanting if you don't understand it and integrate it as a way of life. And as soon as you integrate it as a way of life, no, you will be an expression of your law,
and
you will act accordingly, and no one will be able to challenge it. You will be impenetrable within the environment that you have created and expressed your law in respect of. And until then, there's some cleaning to do. Yeah. So like, I recommend people not to use the knowledge that we teach in order to avoid their emotions. So can you write out a notice to the man who at times acts as a prime minister or whoever in regard to mandatory so-called mandatory vaccinations? Yeah, you can. You can set your notice on the proverbial gate of your property, in this instance your body, and you can put that out there. But if you're doing that motivated by a fear, then I tell you that it will backfire, or it will not work the extent you want. Now, when you deal with your fears around that, and you feel that, and you allow yourself to, I bet you probably won't even want to send the notice. So, I mean, because there's zero threat of forced vaccines actually coming. Never in history have those of mankind who do manipulate and control through systems and other enclosures, have they ever actually done anything like by force? They always do everything by manipulated consent. Now, what they may do is manipulate your consent to by saying, well, if you don't get a vaccine, you don't have this little passport card, then we're going to deny you access to these stores or these. Yeah, I think that's the hot thing in the news at the moment, all about this.
It is, yeah.
Well, okay, well, that is a real thing, and I call that trespass by way of extortion. That sounds like extortion to me. And there's a man or woman at the top of this. Perhaps it's perhaps it's the man that at times acts as health secretary for health and social care. Yeah, maybe it's that man that I need to give notice to and say that I will consider that to be a trespass by way of extortion, and I will seek compensation from you, the man, in the amount of whatever, if for every instance of trespass by way of extortion in the future. So maybe want to set that, but that's the only kind of situation where I've seen the need to put forth my law by way of notice.
I find it so fascinating, Greg, but like I said, and I don't know why, but it just, for me, it takes a lot to sort of sink in, do you know what I mean, and getting used to the different terms as well. And I do feel as well, that's like, for some people, they're just like, what is this common law? Is this the next thing, if you like, you know, is this something I need to be involved in? But I feel like the way you explain it, like I said, if people want to go and have a look at your YouTube videos, you explain it really well in really short sessions, don't you? So it's not complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I'm going to even take those videos down because they're just kind of like, they feel like they're not incomplete. And the bottom line is that you can't get this from a few short videos. You need to come in and live it. It's why we designed the course the way we have, to spend 12 weeks with us, where you learn and you take in all of the information in a series of like courses with exercises of notice writing and other things for you to practice and do for yourself and implement in your life and do feedback and the like, so that it should live, breathe, eat, sleep, shit the law for mankind for 12 weeks, so that you become a new man or woman, because you can't get any other way. Otherwise it just stays as this mental thing and you're never going to really embody it. You're never going to become it. You just carry on sat there watching YouTubes looking for the next thing or the next way to be free. Whereas we'd rather, that's why I don't do many videos and put stuff out there, because I would rather, you know, we haven't had to sell the course. People just like come, the ones that have done it, they just go and say, hey, you've got to go and take this course. And so then there's the next round. And so that's what we'd rather focus our energy on is, you know, we're not trying to change the world, just one man, one woman at a time. Just the one soul at a time. That's all.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much for your time, Greg. So what I will do is I'll put the links to your website and to the course as well in the comments underneath. So if anybody wants to come along and join you or check out your website, then they can go and find you there.
Great.
Thank you very much,
Lindsay. Really nice chatting with you.
And you.